Welcome back, everyone. Recently, we had the great pleasure of looking through a book of medicine compiled from the hadith of the Prophet of Islam. Let's review one thing we learned and then look at an interesting email response to it. We'll talk about this in more detail later, but let me summarize the main point of what's being said. There are numerous hadith that talk about breastfeeding while pregnant. Here in Suyuti's Book of Medicine, Imam Malik is commenting on this topic. Essentially, the belief is that there is some interaction between menstrual blood and breast milk. As a result, pregnancy and breastfeeding can't occur together at the risk of injuring a child. Interestingly, this is one of the topics that Muhammad seems uncertain about. He didn't like breastfeeding during pregnancy and wanted to prohibit it, but couldn't determine, observationally, if it caused any harm or not. However, there are certainly reports attributed to Muhammad that prohibit breastfeeding while pregnant entirely. Muhammad said, "Do not kill your children secretly, for the milk with which a child is suckled while his mother is pregnant overtakes the horseman and throws him from his horse." The puzzling part about being thrown down from a horse reflects the belief that corrupted milk can have immediate or long-lasting effects, resulting in someone reaching adulthood, let's say, but being weaker and less able to succeed in feats of strength, for example, in battle. Now let's look at an email response that I received to my video, "Are You a Hadith Rejector?" This email comes from a woman in a Muslim-majority country, and so I will quote her anonymously because Islam is a religion of peace. I was just watching your video, "Are You a Hadith Rejector?" when you shared this gem about women breastfeeding during pregnancy. Wow, so far, very positive. When I was pregnant with my second, I had several women tell me I needed to stop breastfeeding my toddler because it was bad for the baby. And now we see the wisdom of Muhammad coming to the surface. Then when I delivered, the nurse came to check if my milk had come in, and I said yes, because I'm still breastfeeding my toddler. She was horrified, rightly so, and told me I must immediately stop because it was bad for the baby, and it was a miracle that my baby had not died in the womb. Thankfully, I have a brain. Oh, so when she said this gem, she was being sarcastic. Now I see what's happening. Unfortunately, now pay attention to this part. However, this hadith leads to unsafe weaning practices as women wean their babies early when they get pregnant with another, and those in poverty cannot afford formula. So they give their babies cow's milk, mint tea, herbal infusions, and other food and drink that is not safe for an infant. Muhammad's wisdom leads to illness and malnourishment. I want to be very careful at this point to clearly articulate the root of the problem. The women described at the end of this email are impoverished in at least two ways, materially and intellectually. Materially, they can't afford baby formula. Intellectually, they're impoverished because they've been brainwashed with Muhammad's stupidity. The malnourishment of children because of these hadith is tragic, and I'm certain that if these women knew better, they would stop. But they don't know better. Many of them can't know better because all they know is Islam, and that's not their fault. I'll tell you whose fault it is. Muslim scholars and authorities have preserved and perpetuated the stupidity of these traditions and many others from Muhammad, regardless of the fact that so many of them are regressive, dangerous, and harmful, and affect most people who aren't in a position to know any better, like children or women in poverty in Muslim-majority countries. So great job, Muslims, keeping these traditions alive. From wife beating to FGM to women being intellectually deficient to not breastfeeding while pregnant and so much more. You're doing great work. Or not. So let's see what's actually going on with this medicine stuff in the Islamic sources. Regular viewers of this channel know by now that you should not assume originality when approaching the Muslim sources. Assume whatever you're reading came from somewhere else, and you'll be right most of the time, including now. Here's an example. Muhammad had this dumb idea that a baby would resemble whatever parent orgasmed first. This sounds very close to beliefs held by Aristotle and Galen, among others. And by very close, I mean identical. And regular viewers of this channel will be really surprised by what comes next. These same ideas are also expressed in get ready to be surprised. Are you ready? This is something you haven't heard before 500 times on this channel. That's right, back to the same sources the Quran and Hadith borrow heavily from, rabbinic tradition. Here in the Talmud, we also see that a baby's characteristics are determined by who orgasms first. Note that a proof text is cited, Leviticus 12:2. The rabbis get there by using some of their hermeneutical gymnastics that no critically thinking exegete would accept. So they assume ideas from Greek medicine, but reverse the result by reading into the biblical text. So if a woman reaches an orgasm first, she will bear a male child, and vice versa. How creative. By the way, these are the same types of hermeneutical gymnastics that the Quran accepts when it borrows from rabbinic tradition elsewhere. This is why, for example, the Quran states that the flood waters boiled during Noah's day. What's wordplay for the rabbis is the word of Allah and Muhammad for Muslims. That quote is so good, I expect to see it in the comments section below. But more on boiling in a second. Let's look at another example that illustrates why you should assume unoriginality in the Islamic sources. According to the Quran, humans are created from spurting water that comes forth from a place between the spine and the ribs. This meshes well with the Quran's view that every living creature was created from water. Two things to notice in Surah 86, water and a place between the spine and ribs. By the way, Muslims who want to try the miracle of reinterpretation for this verse, have fun, but the number of people you can fool with that nonsense is declining substantially these days, so you might want to think of something else. Anyway, the Quran is reflecting beliefs attested in ancient medical texts, where a man's seed is created from moisture accumulated in the body. This moisture undergoes a transformation and is sent to the spinal marrow, where it goes to the kidneys next. So now the next time you're playing trivia with your friends, and the question is, what do the Quran, ancient medicine, backbones, and water all have in common? You'll know the answer. You might want to find some new friends. Funny how Allah's revelation sounds so much like Greek medicine. It's almost as if the author of the Quran just took these ideas and... No, that couldn't be. Let's go back to Muhammad's Book of Medicine, now that you've been primed to know that very little in the Islamic sources is original. We're back to the original quote that we looked at the beginning of this video. Notice this line, which provides one basis for the ridiculous assertions made. The menstrual blood passes to the breasts and is converted to milk. So let's see if you've been paying attention. What two types of sources do you think we can find these same ideas in? Tough question, isn't it? That's right, ancient Greek medicine and rabbinic literature. According to the prevailing theories of Greco-Roman medicine, when a woman became pregnant, this same blood, referring to menstrual blood, was reappropriated by the body in order to feed and form the fetus, and when the pregnancy reached its end, redirected to the breasts and concocted into milk. And from the Talmud, some rabbis believed that menstrual blood decomposes and turns into milk. So now we know where that idea comes from. But wait a second, we might have missed something. Did we just read that blood forms the fetus in Greco-Roman medicine? When a woman became pregnant, this same blood was reappropriated by the body in order to feed and form the fetus. And the Quran talks about humans being formed from a clot as well. But what kind of clot? Could that be a blood clot? I don't know. I better ask the scholars. Yep, it's a clot of blood. Well, that's an interesting and a fortuitous coincidence. Now, a few minutes ago, I mentioned boiling. Remember those flood waters of Noah? Just for your information, the mechanism that transforms blood into milk is heat, according to some of these ancient authors. So Aristotle believed that when menstrual blood passes through the heart on the way to the breasts, it was heated by the heart and turned into milk. But aside from all that, since menstrual blood and milk are so closely connected in this world of thought, corruption of these fluids is possible and can harm the child. According to Muhammad, Ironically, as we've seen, this hadith actually results in children being harmed, malnourished in the Muslim world. Now let's look at a comment responding to the same video on hadith rejectors. First of all, notice that this person attempts to apply the label given to him by Marxist identity politics. Maybe if he calls me an Islamophobe, it will signal that he is a member of the oppressed and that I should stop criticizing his worldview. On the contrary, anyone who uses this word with me automatically reduces their credibility by 50% if I'm in a good mood, and I'm rarely in a good mood. But on to the defense. I'm criticizing the hadith because the Quran has no fault. This is a defense being used with increasing frequency as the hadith are being rejected. Now, this channel has dozens of videos criticizing the Quran from numerous angles, but if Muslims want to put their blindfolds on, earplugs in, and bang away on their keyboards in the comment section and ignore all of that while proclaiming that the Quran is unassailable, well, that's your choice to keep your head buried in the sand. But everyone else realizes that you should not try to fall back on the Quran when the weakness of the hadith is exposed. Yes, even on and especially on the subject of science. Think about it. The Quran, the book that teaches that humans are made from spurting water that comes from the backbone. That's your defense, Muslims? You want to retreat from the hadith's knowledge of biology to the Quran? Seriously? Okay, have it your way. The Quran doesn't tell us anything specific about breast milk. This makes me as sad as the verses on adult breastfeeding being removed from the Quran, since anything the Quran would have said about breast milk itself would have been equally entertaining. But the Quran gets very close to our main topic for this video, uncomfortably close for Muslims. First, notice the utter lack of nuance, pun intended because we're getting ready to talk about cow's milk. The utter lack of nuance in these verses. Whether it's a woman, a cow, or a bee, the Arabic word is the same, translated belly. A woman carries a baby in her belly. Cows have milk in their bellies. A bee makes honey in its belly. So let's see what Allah is saying about cow bellies in Surah 16. Now, once again, I am not a Muslim scholar, so let's ask the scholars. Help us out, Ibn Kathir. And surely in the cattle is a lesson for you. We give you to drink from what is in their bellies? Between excretions and blood, pure milk, pleasant tasting to the drinkers. Sure does sound like milk is stored in the belly of a cow. Here's what Ibn Kathir gets from this verse. It, referring to milk, is between excrement and blood in the belly of the animal, in this case, the cow. So it seems that milk is stored in the belly of the cow. Let's read further. The blood goes to the veins and the milk goes to the udder, and blah, 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 blah. None of them gets mixed with another after separating, and none of them is affected by the other. Oh, this is the sign. Look how Allah keeps the milk and the excretions and the blood all in the stomach of the cow, but separate. What a miracle. Let's fact check Ibn Kathir and the Quran using a kids' science website. I thought a kids' science website would be appropriate since Muhammad loved children so much that he slept with one. As plant material and other stuff moves through the other chambers of the stomach and into the small intestine, nutrients and excess water are absorbed into the bloodstream and then circulate to the mammary gland in the udder. There, special cells combine the nutrients with sugars from the cow's liver to create milk. Also, the milk is made in the udder, which means it isn't stored in the stomach, which means it doesn't actually have to get transported through the body to be dispensed. Do you see where Allah failed here? If he would have used some nuance instead of the same word belly over and over, and if he would have said that cows don't actually have milk in their bellies, it's made in the udder, then maybe, just maybe, that would have fixed Muhammad's problem. Had the Quran been written more carefully and accurately, Muhammad and generations of Muslim scholars would have concluded that cows produce milk in their udders, and, by analogy, and here's the conceptual leap that hopefully Muhammad could have made, that by analogy, women produce milk in their breasts. Therefore, there's no danger of cross-contamination between blood and breast milk. Then kids today wouldn't be malnourished because they don't know any better than to follow Muhammad's stupid hadith, which simply perpetuates outdated ideas from ancient medicine. But no, Allah makes no effort to contradict ancient Greek medicine in the Quran. In fact, we've actually seen that it's endorsed. So no, Muslims, don't try to fall back on the Quran. In the very few times Allah musters up the courage to talk about biology in the Quran, he's embarrassing, like the hadith, though mercifully, he's less detailed. Before we end, let's remind ourselves of the big picture of what's actually going on here. For a very long time now, Muslims have been losing wars and land, getting left behind in technology, and having their religion increasingly scrutinized. All of this has left them with an identity crisis. Modern science provided a new discourse and an opportunity to regain some credibility. If only the Muslim sources could be reread as scientifically accurate, maybe that would help the religion limp along for a time and blend in with modern societies, giving the illusion of compatibility. This enterprise is failing massively. Today, Islamic sources are being subjected to scrutiny like never before, and they are failing those tests as well. Yes, there are plenty of Muslims floating around in the vacuum of Islamic thought, but there are plenty leaving. Those numbers are increasing. The religion of Islam is collapsing. But hey, that's what happens when you build your house on the sand. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.